Chapter 33 of Genesis sees Jacob meeting his brother Esau after 20 years. That 2 decades saw neither interaction nor communication between them. They didn't part on the best of terms. In fact, Esau was breathing out threats to kill Jacob because he'd connived to cheat Esau out of the coveted patriarchal blessing. Sometime before that, Jacob had maneuvered Esau into selling him the firstborn birthright, though, truth be told, it didn't take much maneuvering to accomplish. Esau had amply proven his unfitness to bear the covenant promises that God had given their grandfather Abraham and father Isaac. Esau had shown little interest in the covenant, while Jacob showed maybe too much ambition to obtain it. If we're talking fitness, Jacob wasn't exactly a bright, shining specimen of integrity either. As the page turns from chapter 32 to 33, it also turns to a new chapter in Jacob's life by the events that end chapter 32. God appeared to him the night before his tension-filled reunion with Esau and wrestled with him until dawn. The contest left Jacob permanently crippled. His earlier preparations suggest that Jacob hoped to make an escape if Esau attacked. Well, that was impossible now that he went about on a crutch. Jacob had to trust God to protect him. But then that's what God had promised to do. Jacob was learning that it's safer to trust God than his own clever preparations. Verse 1. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. And so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. And then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Jacob had no idea what kind of mood his brother was in. Was he still angry over being cheated, or had 20 years seen him cool? Having an army of 400 men at his back seemed to signal that Esau was coming to get even. The previous chapter tells us that Jacob had already sent Esau a gift of over 500 animals as a way to hopefully smooth the waters with him. But not knowing Esau's mood, Jacob split his huge household into groups, set a distance between them, so that way if Esau did attack, the others could see and hopefully make good an escape. Then he went out ahead of them to be the first that Esau encountered. As they neared each other, Jacob quickly let Esau know that he honored him by bowing repeatedly, something that the lesser did for the greater, towards the greater in that culture. So what's going to be Esau's response? Can you feel the tension in the story? Verse 4, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Whew, okay, it's all good. Esau's not going to attack. So why then the 400 men that he had brought with him? Well, Esau was no more aware of Jacob's intent than Jacob was of Esau's. As far as Esau knew, Jacob might return with an army at his back to claim the birthright by force. And the fact was, Esau had done quite well. He also had a large family and many flocks and herds. He was duty and honor bound to protect them. But when he saw no big force coming with Jacob, just a huge family and enough servants to tend his herds, and then he saw Jacob bowing as they approached one another, he knew that his brother posed no threat. Verse 5, and he lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, who are these with you? Now, of course, Esau knew that they had to be Jacob's wives and kids, but this is what long-separated relatives say when they're reunited. You've probably heard it. Oh, who's this? Who is this fine-looking young man? Who are these beautiful women? Surely not your wives, Jacob. We read on. So he, and that would be Jacob, said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. Then Esau said, what do you mean by all this company which I met? So Esau is referring here to the flocks and herds that Jacob had already sent to meet him days before. And he, against Jacob, said, these are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I've enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. And Jacob said, no, please, if I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Jacob means that he couldn't be happier seeing the face of God himself than to see Esau's countenance look upon him with favor and acceptance. Verse 11, please take my blessing that is brought to you because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have enough. And so he urged him and he took it. Then Esau said, let us take our journey. Let us go and I will go before you. So Esau invites Jacob to come to Edom, where Esau is living, and stay with him, or at least as much of the road as was common to their path. Verse 13, but Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and the herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock would die. Please, let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure until I come to my Lord at Seir. And Esau said, well, now let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. And so Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth, which means booth. So the brothers are happy to at least be reconciled to the fact that they don't want to kill each other. But after 20 years, their lives are very different, and both know it. So out of expected politeness, Esau invites Jacob to stay with him while Jacob says that he may take his brother up on the offer, but not to wait for him. Jacob could tell by the way that Esau made the invitation he didn't really mean it. He was just saying what was expected to say. So Jacob gives the polite reply, and he says, hey, thanks for the invitation. How nice it would be to stay with you, my brother. But Esau knew that Jacob was begging off the offer, and so he offered some men to act as guards for Jacob's group. Again, Jacob politely declined the offer, and Esau didn't argue the point because he didn't really want to leave his men and have them separated from his group. Esau then heads home to Seir, also known as the land of Edom, while Jacob heads northwest to Succoth. Now, he had passed by this region 20 years earlier when he left home for Mesopotamia. He knew it to be prime grazing land for his now many flocks. He stayed at Succoth for a while, then moved toward the city of Shechem, several miles away. Verse 18, then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohi Israel, which means God, the God of Israel. It's interesting that Jacob settled at Shechem. When God spoke to him at Paddan Aram and told him to return to the land of promise, he reminded him that he was the God of Bethel. When Jacob took his vow at Bethel 20 years earlier, he said that he would return and make it a place of worship to God. But he doesn't go to Bethel. He goes to Shechem, a city teeming with the influences of a corrupt Canaanite culture. Jacob is going to find himself running into all kinds of trouble at Shechem.